as we are developing our Marcom strategy, it's really important for us to utilize this process of evaluation. We need to know what is working. We need to know what works. So we do a lot of research, a lot of connections with customers to evaluate the Marcom pieces that we've been producing over the time. There's a couple of things that we're going to evaluate specifically: messages, online metrics, and also behaviors that respondents are bringing to the marketplace in relation to our communication endeavors. Let's take a look at message evaluations. As I kind of implied a moment ago, we want to be able to evaluate the message at every stage of development. So, from idea to actual execution to the consumer seeing the ad either in a magazine or seeing it on television, we need to be really testing our concepts. And so we often will produce ideas and then bring them to customers, whether we do it through a storyboarding method where we're actually showing them what an ad would look like, or we're showing them some form of artist sketch so that they can get a sense of what the ad is going to look like. And we also can evaluate the message, though, once the ad is produced. And in fact, the post-production and the post-launch types of evaluations tend to happen a lot more, although more and more agencies are starting to recognize that it might be better to get consumers involved before they go and produce the ad rather than after they go and produce the ad. But still, this post-production type of research is key. So one of the forms of post-production research we do is this idea of copy testing. This is right at the end of the development of our communication piece, and what we're really looking to do is to evaluate the message in the format that we're delivering it in. So we're trying to figure out, are we saying the right thing and are we communicating it in the right type of way? We can use portfolio tests, theater tests, and online tests, and all of these are ways in which we expose our marketing communications piece to the consumer, and we try to garner feedback from them. Portfolio tests would put your piece of marketing communications amongst other pieces. We can do the theater test by bringing in panels of viewers to watch an ad. The idea is that with all of these tests, what we're trying to do is simulate a real-world environment so that consumers are seeing the marketing communication piece in a context that they would ultimately see it if it were to run in the real world. Specifically with advertising, there's a few things that we look at when we're doing this form of copy testing, or we should say post-production type of advertising tracking. Oftentimes we'll show an ad to consumers and then we test them later. So we do what's called a pre-test, and we try to find out what they know about a brand, whether they're aware of a brand, whether they recognize a brand, whether they recall a brand. Then we show them the ad, and then we do what's called a post-test, and we ask them the same kinds of questions, whether they are aware of a brand, whether they recall a brand, whether they recognize a brand, etc. And what we're looking for within this kind of pre-test, post-test is we're looking for changes in brand recognition, we're looking for changes in likability, and we're looking for changes in recall and understanding what our brand is all about. We also have emotional reaction tests, and I think that this is kind of interesting because, emotions are very hard to track. And so what we've tried to do is we've created these things called warmth monitors. And what you do is you bring in some consumers, or you bring in respondents, and you give them a little, either a machine where they can input their feelings, or you give them a piece of paper and have them write it out and things of that nature. But you show them an ad, and then you ask them throughout the course of the ad to judge how they're feeling at certain points in time. Sometimes it helps to look at an example. Here is a graph from a warmth meter. So imagine that someone is watching a 30-second TV advertisement, right? And they have a little gauge in front of them. So this is a mechanized kind of test. And as the ad is going along, the consumer is asked to turn the gauge to the level of warmth, or to the level that they feel their feelings are being expressed. So you can see that there's dipping of negative emotions, there's peaking of positive emotions, etc. And the whole idea of this is so that the so that the brand can get a feeling for the pieces of the ad that are working the best. Now, one thing to recognize, this is a self-report. So it's just me saying, I feel good now, I don't feel good now, I feel better now, I feel worse now, etc. So there are some flaws related to that. When you move online and you do evaluation, you have a higher degree of trackability. We can track what people are clicking through. We can track how long people are staying on a page, their dwell rate, their dwell time, what they're looking at for the longest periods of time. We also can tell, whether they've redeemed coupons, which we can tell that offline also, their response rates, their sales rates, and then this web chatter. That's the old school term that we now are looking at in terms of like retweets and likes and shares and things like that through social media. Finally, behavioral measures, and sometimes I caution with these because sales is something that we always want to connect with marketing communications and advertising. Just be careful because MarCom can drive sales, and that's why we engage in it. But advertising, it's really hard to connect an ad with a sale, to be able to say someone saw this ad and then bought the product. We have other forms of response rates that we can track, things like people who clicked on a link, people who called a number, people who visited a website. We can definitely track coupons that are being redeemed or special offers that are being redeemed, and those kinds of things. So there are some behavioral measures that are really strong for us to track in terms of marketing communications, and these are going to form the foundation of our evaluation.